My ex showed up at my door to talk after 3 years. I said, "Sure, come in." Then I introduced him to my fiancée, who was wearing a ring he could never afford. His face when he realized I'd moved on was, "I, 32 male, am an architectural engineer living in a major U.S. city, and I need to get this off my chest because the sheer level of entitlement I witnessed last weekend is something I didn't think existed outside of bad soap operas. To understand why this was so satisfying, you have to know where I started. 5 years ago, my life was a dumpster fire. My student loans were crushing me, and the small firm I started with a partner went belly up because he was cooking the books. I was broke, depressed, and literally eating instant noodles to survive. That was exactly when my ex decided she'd had enough. We'd been together 4 years. I thought she was my rock, but she was more like an anchor. She didn't just leave. She destroyed me. She waited until the day I got the foreclosure notice on our apartment to pack her bags. Her exact words were, "I need stability, not a project. You're a sinking ship, and I'm not drowning with you." She took the dog, the only car we owned, and as I found out later when my car got declined at the grocery store, she drained our joint emergency fund. It had about $4,000 left. I couldn't fight her. I didn't have money for a lawyer, and honestly, I was too broken to care. Fast forward 3 years to now. I didn't just survive, I clawed my way back. I landed a massive contract with a tech giant to design their new eco-campus, invested the payout wisely, and started my own firm. I met my fiancé, a trauma surgeon who is brilliant, kind, and actually likes me for me, not my wallet. We just moved into a custom house I designed on 2 acres of land, and I recently proposed with a custom 3-carat sapphire and diamond ring. Ironically, the exact vintage Art Deco style my ex used to obsess over, but way higher quality. Last Saturday around 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. My fiancé was in the kitchen making coffee, and I was in the living room reviewing some blueprints. I checked the security feed on my phone and felt my blood run cold. It was my ex. She looked rough, tired, frantic, wearing designer clothes that were clearly a few seasons old and didn't fit right. I hadn't spoken to her since the day she left. Curiosity, mixed with a little bit of old anger, got the better of me. So I opened the door. She didn't even say hello. She just said, "Hey," breathless, and immediately looked past me, scanning the marble foyer and the custom chandelier. Her eyes practically popped out her head. She asked if I lived there, and when I confirmed it, she pushed past me saying we needed to talk about us. I told her there was no us, but she insisted it was a legal matter, and she wanted to handle it like adults before involving lawyers. That triggered my professional paranoia, so I gave her 5 minutes. She walked straight into the living room, running her hands over my furniture like she was appraising it. She made a snarky comment about how I'd done better than expected, and before I could shut her down, my fiancé walked in with 2 mugs of coffee. She looked effortless in an oversized t-shirt, and that ring on her finger was catching the morning sun like a beacon. My ex froze. She looked at the ring, then at my fiancé, then back to me with this look of absolute betrayal. My fiancé, being the sharp woman she is, sensed a vibe immediately and asked who she was. When I introduced her as my ex, she didn't flinch. She just looped her arm through mine and introduced herself as my fiancé. That's when the mask slipped. My ex pointed a shaking finger at the ring and snapped. "So you had money for that, but you couldn't pay the rent 3 years ago?" I told her I earned it after she left, but she wasn't hearing it. She started ranting about how we were partners and how she built the foundation of my career, claiming she supported me for 4 years and emotional labored me through my failures. She felt entitled to my success because she dated me when I was a nobody. Then she pulled out a manila envelope and dropped the bomb. She claimed that because we lived together for 4 years, we had a common law marriage in our state, and she was there for her share of the assets and the appreciation of my earning potential. She demanded half the value of my firm, or a cash settlement of $200,000 right then and there. She called it a severance package. My fiancé just squeezed my arm to keep me calm. I told my ex to get out, but she smirked and said not until I read her demands. Then she threatened that if I tried to kick her out, she'd scream assault and ruin my reputation in town. She sat down, crossed her legs, and looked at my fiancée, telling her the ring was technically purchased with funds that were partially hers. That was it. She threatened my home, my business, and disrespected my future wife. I looked at my fiancée, and she gave me the look that says, "Gloves off." She sat down opposite my ex and started dismantling her argument with surgical precision. She asked about the common law claim, and my ex started spouting nonsense about how we told people we were practically married and shared bills. While they were talking, I walked over to the sideboard where I keep my iPad. I needed to verify something. I asked my ex who her lawyer was, and she gave some vague answer about a very aggressive firm. I picked up her envelope. It was a joke. It was a draft letter full of legal jargon used incorrectly. She mentioned habeas corpus in a property dispute paragraph. She didn't have a lawyer. She was bluffing. I decided to call her out. I asked her to clarify that if I didn't give her $200,000, she would sue me and launch a smear campaign. She smiled and said, "Exactly. You're smart. Crypto is fine if you want to keep it off the books." I unlocked the iPad and pulled up the state statutes. I read them out loud to her. In our state, common law marriage requires 3 things: an agreement to be married, cohabitation, and public representation of marriage. We never agreed to be married. In fact, I reminded her of the text where she called me a loser she'd never marry. Then I asked about her taxes. Filing as single acts as a sworn statement against the existence of a marriage. I knew she filed single, and so did I. She went quiet, but I wasn't done. I lowered my voice and told her that demanding $200,000 in exchange for silence regarding damaging information is a Class F felony called extortion. And since the amount was over $100,000, it carries a mandatory minimum sentence. She tried to laugh it off as a negotiation, but I pointed to the small black dome in the corner of the ceiling. I explained that because of my government contracts, I have high-fidelity audio and video recording in all common areas. I had her entire shakedown, including the threat to scream assault, recorded in 4K. She stood up, looking like she was going to be sick, and tried to leave. My fiancé told her to sit down because I wasn't finished. I called my brother on speakerphone. He's a partner at a major law firm, the same guy my ex used to call a deadbeat when he was in law school. I told him everything, including her admission that she stole the $4,000 3 years ago. My brother laughed and told me to call the precinct. He said fleeing the scene of an attempted felony looks bad for bail hearings. My ex scrambled for her purse and ran to the door, but I'd already used the app to lock the 8-foot electronic iron gates at the end of the driveway. She was trapped. She ran to the window, saw the gates were shut, and turned on the waterworks. She started crying about how she was in debt. Her boyfriend kicked her out, and she just needed help. I told her she didn't love me. She loved my potential, and when it didn't pay out fast enough, she stole from me. My fiancé stood up and told her to save the tears for the judge. Then my ex tried her last dirty trick. She pulled out her phone and threatened to tweet that I beat her. She said she had a following and would ruin me before the cops arrived. I didn't stop her. I just told her to go ahead. I explained that my firm uses a service to track libel, and if she posted that while being recorded blackmailing me, it would prove actual malice, which is the hardest part to prove in a defamation suit. It would turn her from a victim into a calculated criminal with a time-stamped record of premeditation. She hesitated, her hands shaking. The realization that she was out of her depth finally hit her. She lowered the phone and begged me to open the gate, promising she'd disappear. But I'd heard that before. My phone buzzed. My brother texted that the officers were 4 minutes away. When I told her the cops were almost there, she collapsed on the sofa sobbing, asking why I had to destroy her when I had everything. I told her I wasn't destroying her. I was holding her accountable. There's a difference. The police arrived, and the interaction was clinical. I showed them the footage on the iPad. The extortion attempt was clear as day. They cuffed her, and for the first time in her life, she couldn't charm or bully her way out of consequences. But here's the crazy part. 2 days later, my brother called me with the results of a background check they ran for discovery. It turns out I wasn't her only target. She was being investigated for fraud in 2 other states. She pulled similar stunts on an ex in Chicago and a business partner in Austin. threatening legal action for unpaid consulting or common law assets, and settling for $20,000 just to make her go away. I was supposed to be her whale. Because I recorded her and pressed charges, the DA in those other counties got interested. They stacked the charges. She wasn't looking at probation. She was looking at hard time. She didn't give up, though, from a holding cell. She managed to get a friend to start a GoFundMe titled, "Help Me Fight a Corrupt Millionaire Abuser." It raised $500 an hour. My fiancé and I didn't get mad. We got legal. We released a redacted transcript of the video where she explicitly said, "Give me $200,000 or I will scream assault," and sent it to Platform. They took the page down in 20 minutes for violating terms regarding criminal activity and refunded the donors. That's when the mutual friends who had sided with her started texting me apologies. Apparently, she'd been telling people for years that I was abusive to cover up her own financial mess. The video exposed all of it. The legal process took 6 months. She tried to plead not guilty, claiming the video was a deep fake, which really annoyed the judge after a forensics expert authenticated it in 10 minutes. She eventually took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to attempted extortion and wire fraud. She got sentenced to 4 years in state prison, followed by probation. She also has a permanent restraining order and has to pay restitution for the $4,000 she stole, though I doubt I'll ever see that money. A week before she was transferred to prison, she sent me a letter. It was a stand of remorse letter dictated by her lawyer, but at the bottom, she had scribbled, "You ruined my life." I framed it. It hangs in my office next to the first dollar I earned. My fiancé and I are getting married next spring. We're keeping the guest list tight. No drama. Just the people who stuck by me when I had nothing. I learned that the best revenge isn't screaming. It's living well, knowing the law, and letting entitled people trip over their own egos. She wanted half my empire, but all she got was a 6x8 cell.